Hey everybody, this is Dave with Trouts Fly Fishing. Let's talk a little bit today about casting, some casting fixes and some faults that we can correct. With casting in particular, casting is not hard. I'm a firm believer that anyone can cast. The one thing that we don't do is we don't spend enough time practicing. We're all students of the game, and when it comes to casting, that is certainly no exception. I'm a big believer, if you can get out and cast for 10, 15 minutes, a couple, 2-3 days a week, it's going to take your casting to the next level. As casters, I personally am never satisfied with my casts. That's why I continually trying to get out and practice as much as I can. One of the biggest mistakes that I see in casting particularly is on our final delivery cast, we always have the inclination to drop our rod tip, especially when we're trying to shoot line. So, whether it's a saltwater trip where you're spending good money to get out and you're getting, maybe only a handful of shots at a permit or a tarpon, you want to make that cast count. The other thing I tease is, the fish really don't care what your cast looks like, but they do look at a good presentation, and we can't present until we get that fly in front of those fish. So here's a couple things that might help you, especially when you're, whether you're going out on a saltwater trip or even if you're doing some trout fishing and trying to present a dry fly out on the water. One of the biggest mistakes that I see, and I was certainly guilty of it, is always dropping that rod tip on our final delivery cast. And basically what that does is opens up our loop. I think we all know as anglers that we're always striving to get a really, really tight loop in fly casts. And the reason for that is simple. First and foremost, they're accurate. And when we're trying to present to whether it's a saltwater fish or to a trout, accuracy is key. And again, it kind of jumps into that good presentation on there. So getting that tight loop is not only going to allow our cast to go where we want it to go, but it is going to cut through the wind a little bit. And where this really starts to rear its ugly head is when we start to shoot line. And as casters and whatnot, the line, again, the fly rod talks to us. People always talk about a loaded fly rod. Well, the easiest way to determine if your fly rod is loaded, you can feel that fly line is pulling on your non-dominant hand. And that literally, the rod is speaking to you and saying, yeah, the fly line's loaded. And all too often what I'll see is when we try and shoot line, we feel it pulling on that final delivery cast, we tend to try and throw it. And again, by throwing it, all we're doing is we're opening up that loop again, and that fly line is just going to die on us. So whether it's your first cast or your last cast, there really is no difference. So once you get some tempo going, you feel that fly line pulling on your left hand on there, don't change anything. You can just simply shoot all that line out there. So, if you spend a little bit of time practicing that, stopping your rod tip a little bit higher, having the ability to identify what a wide loop looks like versus a narrow loop on there, and again, that's going to result on how far I'm bringing either my rod tip back or how far I'm bringing it forward. There's a great analogy out there that, knowing that the fly line goes where the rod tip goes, if we just look at the tip of the fly rod, and we put a paintbrush on the end of it, I could paint the whole inside of an igloo like that. So the result of that is when I have live fly line going out there, we're going to get that same result out there. If I get all that fly line out there and I start to make that cast and I drop my fly line way back on my back cast and on my forward cast, no matter how hard we try and throw it, it's just going to pile up on us. So again, if I can keep the rod tip on my back cast and my forward cast traveling in a straight line, I'm going to get the desired result, and I'm going to get some tighter loops on there. The other thing I tell people, practice your casting in a park. Don't practice it out on the water. Practice your fishing out on the water. For me, being a right-handed caster, what I'll do is I'll drop my right foot back a little bit. And what I can do is I can open up my stance and I can kind of get an idea of what my casts look like on my back cast, if I'm dropping my rod tip too far back. And all I'm going to try and do is develop some muscle memory on there. And if I get that muscle memory going on there, you're going to start to develop some really, really good habits on there. So again, let's review. If you start that cast, slack is your enemy, start it down low, pick that up, make a false cast or two. Once you start to feel that line pulling, don't change anything. Just let that fly line go. Again, one of the biggest mistakes we see as casters is, again, dropping that rod tip too far back on your back cast and bringing it too far forward on your forward cast. I'm a firm believer, casting is all about timing and technique. We all have more than enough muscle from our wrist all the way down to make that cast. The other thing that I'm always quick to point out to people, use the strongest digit on your hand, not your thumb. Putting your thumb on there, using that key grip on there, pushing that thumb forward, take advantage of that. You know, again, knowing that the fly line goes where the rod tip goes, your thumb is nothing more than a rudder for that. So no matter where I point my thumb, conversely, that's where that rod tip is going to go on there. So just try and make it a point, get out and practice, try and tighten up those loops a little bit, let that rod talk to you in terms of getting that rod load out there. Once you feel that rod load, don't change anything, just simply let that fly line go and it'll shoot for you. Thanks for tuning in.